Hi, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Dianne Cassidy Consulting.
Woo woo!
If you didn't know, if you're new here, or if you didn't know, or if you need a lactation consultation, Dianne actually does online consultations, and she can do one for you. And you can also have, we'll tell about the insurance thing.
So we can also see if your insurance will pick it up, which often it does. So it is a wonderful little benefit. Just go to my website, what is my website? DianneCassidyConsulting.com.
It doesn't have 4 W's on it, I'm sure.
No, it doesn't have 4 W's on it. I'm doing a commercial, I guess, is what I feel like I'm doing. DianneCassidyConsulting.com is my website, DIANNE, CassidyConsulting.com. And you can go to where it has the insurance part where it's under Contact Me. And it has a QR code that you can zap, and you can just fill out the information and they will get back to you and let you know if your insurance will be taken. And once your insurance is accepted, then we can set up a consult, and it will cover you for 6 visits once your insurance is accepted. So it's really a great process. And it does cover a lot of people. So just go ahead and do that. Even if you don't know if you're having any problems, even if it's just like you have questions, like let's hook up, it doesn't hurt to try and see.
Especially if it's going to be covered. I mean, you might as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Make sure things are going okay. And
I know.
Talk about your goals or whatever.
Things that you have coming up or whatever's going on for you. But yeah, so if you are interested, check it out. DianneCassidyConsulting.com under Contact Me.
Also, The link is in the show notes down. You can
the link is in the show
wherever you're
notes.
listening from. You can scroll down, and it's going to be down in there
with 4 W's.
And all of the other stuff that's down there. If you don't look at the show notes, Dianne works very hard on those show notes. So you scroll down and look at all the cool information that's down there. She links like other episodes that are relevant to the one that you're listening to. And yeah.
I know. Check it out. I spend my Sundays doing that.
Yeah.
Usually Sunday. But
you can also head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com where you can find all that information about Dianne, and you can find out information about all of our sponsors. If you can give them your business, do, because they make this podcast possible. If you ever need anything, just check there and see if they've got it. And while you're there, you can scroll down and enter your email address, and we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we would love to see you on Patreon, because we have a nice little community growing over there where we have our ad-free episodes, and we have a lot of extra content and Zoom hangouts every month where we hang out and talk, and we have our Revolution Parenting episodes. And you can also scroll down into those show notes, and the very top link will be our Patreon link, and you can check out if any of the tiers look good to you. And we are still hosting that ongoing giveaway for people who leave reviews around the internet, written reviews, stars, whatever it is. Take a screenshot, send it to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com along with your address, and we will send you a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. And normally right now I say Dianne has our review of the week, but this week it's me that has a couple of messages to read. And I'll be honest, people send messages and emails and stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to read this follow-up message on the podcast. And I got to say, I don't always remember to do that. But I've had a couple that I was hanging on to read. And one of them is from a dental hygienist. And we were doing an episode one time where we were talking about people taking blood pressure. I can't remember what we were talking about. And we were like, they take it at the dentist, and we're like, why?
My dentist takes it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at my dentist's office.
Said, and I probably me going, why? Because that's my attitude about a lot of things. But she says, so she sent a message and she says, I'm a dental hygienist. Dental hygienists are trained and recommended to provide a blood pressure screening at each visit. We recognize that oral health and overall health are directly correlated. Since high blood pressure, heart disease are silent killers, and that most people see the dentist more frequently than their general physician, we are often the first person to make them aware of a problem they didn't know they had.
Oh.
So it's just a little extra protection there. And I didn't really know that, the reason for that. I got to say, my dentist doesn't do that. So I guess he doesn't care about my health. But yeah. And then I have another message here from Corinne. And this message is kind of a review, but she talks a little bit about stuff that is going on with her. And I wanted to read that. And I thought maybe we could just kind of talk about that for a little while. She says, hi, I'm really hoping that you see this message. My name is Corinne, and I've been listening to your podcast since I'm about 15 weeks pregnant. I found it when my mom was newly diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and I needed all the breastfeeding podcasts to dive into as a distraction from the stress and prep for my first baby. Even prior to me being pregnant, breastfeeding was always a goal of mine, really wanting to experience that bond. And also, I'm very passionate about all things health and nutrition. Anyway, I had my baby boy at the end of April, and sadly, my mom passed away the next day.
Oh my God.
To say that my postpartum experience has been extra stressful is an understatement. Trying to figure out motherhood, breastfeeding, and mourn the loss of my mom has been such a challenge. I am seeing a therapist and getting to a mom support group and have a lot of love and support from friends and family. Also, my midwives are on top of me to make sure I don't experience severe postpartum depression. That's her message. And I can't even...
It's really sad.
I know. It's so awful. It's like as soon as when you have your first baby, you really do go through this whole thing of just this really intense identity change.
Mm-hmm.
Like your identity changes from just, whatever, who you were before now to a parent. And I remember early on just like thinking about my mom and like thinking about her having me as a baby and like, really kind of my view of her and her, I don't know, changing and thinking about that in a way that I had never thought about. And to have her die the next day.
Yeah. It's really sad. There were neighbors of mine, actually. We had been neighbors. So we had been connected through that. And then like we all moved away and still kept in touch with them a little bit. And one of the daughters, because it was the neighbor, she had 2 daughters who were they were adorable. And one of them had a baby. It was like, it wasn't her first baby. It was, I can't even remember, like maybe it was like her 3rd or 4th baby or whatever. But their mom died in like an accident.
Ugh.
Right within like, I think she was still in the hospital with the baby. So it was very, very close to it. And I remember seeing her at the wake holding this tiny little newborn, at the calling hours. And it was just like, oh my God, they were so close to their mom.
Yeah.
And like, how do you process that?
Yeah, that's the thing.
That kind of
like,
grief.
How do you,
like,
you don't even have, like, you have a baby. And we talk about all the time about how all consuming that is. And we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the death of a family member, even without that situation, is going to be all consuming as well. And just even having the brain space for all of it.
It's really sad.
And we actually have an email that somebody had sent to me, which we're going to do a whole episode around. A woman who lost her husband. I can't remember.
She was pregnant.
While she was pregnant or really early on. Yeah. And that's a whole other thing. We're going to talk about like that on a whole episode. But yeah, it happens to people.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful that she talks about how much support she has from her family and her friends and her midwives who are really kind of, like she says, on top of her, like,
yeah, I was just going to say
and,
that. I'm really glad she's got a good support system.
Yeah.
That's really important. But thank you for sharing that with us, Corinne.
Yeah, thank you so much, Corinne. And yeah, just sending you lots of love from everybody here. And yeah, now we can talk about cups.
Cups. And
Dianne
so
wants
this,
to talk about cups.
well, this came up. I was talking to a speech language pathologist that I know, that I send a lot of babies to that are struggling with suck dysfunction and stuff like that. And she was like, do you have an episode on going from breastfeeding to cup feeding? And I'm like, I don't think we do. I know we don't. And she was like, that would be really helpful because people really struggle with going from breastfeeding to cup feeding. So I don't know what I would talk about for a full half an hour on that. So we thought we would do we would talk a little bit about even just going from breast to bottle can sometimes be a struggle for people. But when you're going from, first of all, if you're going from breast to cup, like a lot of people wonder what is a good age for that. Babies can take a cup starting around 7 months. So you can just go right to cup. Like, for example, for me, and this was a different situation because I wasn't working. So my babies did not really need to take a bottle. So I went, if I wanted to give them something else when we started solid foods, if I wanted to give them a little water or something like that, I just went to a cup because I was like, well, why do a bottle at that point? Right. So that's what I did. But a lot of people their babies are already on a bottle and they just stay with the bottle until their baby is like a year. But you can go to a cup at like 7 months. When did yours go to a cup? Do you remember?
Oh, God. I don't remember. I probably not before 1.
No.
Honestly, they probably went right to a straw cup.
Yeah, that's what it's recommended.
In the straw cup, simply because they spill things all the time. And I will tell you, they are 13 and 10, and I give them straw cups. There's like we have silver cups, and then you put the top on, and it's got the like stainless steel straw.
Yeah,
and I'm like, here, you can have this, because they're constantly elbowing things over. And anyway, yeah.
So the best cup. This is what she told me, because I asked her, I'm like, well, what do you recommend is the best cup? She said a straw cup, and she said the Ola baby cup is the best one she feels. So if anybody's looking for what do I start with, what should I start with? Start with a straw cup. That is better for babies who are learning how to take a cup. And it really, just start with some water, put a little water in there, let them try to suck it up with using a straw cup, let them hold on to it, let them play with it. Just like when you're starting solids, you're letting them play with it. You're letting them figure it out. It might take them a little bit of time to kind of figure out, how do I take this cup? But they figure it out and they do it. And then you could put breast milk in a cup too, if you don't want your baby to have a bottle, or, if you're worried about them having a bottle, or you don't want them to have a bottle anymore, you can totally have them take it in a cup.
Yeah.
Or anything else you want to put in there. Don't put cereal in there.
No. Or don't mix the rice cereal in there.
Yeah. Let them suck that up through a cup. I'm kidding, partially, but
but really don't.
I know. Don't do it. Now, going from breast to bottle, that is, sometimes people really do struggle with that, with babies taking a bottle.
Now, before we go to bottles.
Yeah.
What if the baby is just like, this speech and language pathologist that you're talking about, because there's babies that really like struggle with that, right? What is somebody going to, if a baby is struggling to use a straw, to use a cup, and we think that there's something that might be going on. How do we tell? How do you what do you look for before you're referring somebody to her?
I mean, if I'm going to refer somebody to her about taking a cup or just about breastfeeding?
Well, about taking a cup. Or
probably
or is that not?
If they were having trouble taking a straw cup, I would look for things like gagging, choking. Maybe they're struggling with solids too, with taking solids. I don't think you would see it with just the cup.
You wouldn't see it just the cup. Yeah.
Mm-mm. No, you would see it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, start with a straw cup. That's going to be your best bet to help your baby take it. And start anywhere. 7 months is a good starting point for it too. Now, for bottles, some people, let's see, how do I say this? Well, starting with bottles, there's a lot of different information out there. And some people say, wait until your baby's a certain age before you start bottles. And some people say, if you wait till a certain age, then your baby's never going to take a bottle. But if you really need your baby to take a bottle, you can start anywhere after 2 or 3 weeks. If your baby's been breastfeeding, and they're breastfeeding well. So you can start after a couple weeks.
People are like, oh, but they're going to get nipple confusion.
Right. Yeah, that's what you hear a lot of. They're going to get nipple confusion. And they're going to get, nipple confusion, it's I feel like that's something that happens if a baby's not breastfeeding well. If they're not breastfeeding well, they're struggling with figuring out how to breastfeed. They're not sucking and swallowing well. They're uncoordinated. They're having some suck issues. And we introduce a bottle into that. Then we're just there's a lot going on there. Because we know bottle feeding, people think bottle feeding is easier than breastfeeding.
Yeah, right.
It's really not. It's really not. I think it looks easier because the babies just take it in so easily. But it's really not easier for them. It's just not.
Yeah, because I feel because if a baby is struggling, babies have control when they're breastfeeding, right? They can start, they can stop. And so when they're fussing or popping on and off or whatever, people are like, oh my God, they just can't figure it out. And then we put a baby on their back and put a bottle in their mouth and there's nothing they can do. So they just have to swallow, they're fighting for their lives on their back.
Yeah.
And so, it totally looks easier. And it looks like they're hungry because they can't do anything except swallow it. But that's not.
And you hear from people too. People will always say, I remember this even in the hospital setting. And people have told me this too, that have had preemie babies or babies that were sick or babies that it had to be, in special care for maybe they were, whatever was going on. And they would hear from the staff, from the baby, the baby nurses, that bottle feeding was better for the baby because they didn't have to work as hard, because it was less calories, because it was, and none of that there's no research behind any of that. There is absolutely no research behind any of that. And what we do know to be true is that when babies are breastfeeding, their respirations are more stable, their breathing is more stable, their blood sugars are more stable because they're right connected to their parent, right? They're right on their mom. So we know that to be true. Whereas with bottle feeding, that is not true. So their body, when they're breastfeeding, is behaving the way it's supposed to because that is what they're meant to do. So they're not burning more calories, so to speak. There's no research behind the fact that, they're burning so many more calories when they're breastfeeding. I don't even know where that came from.
That is wild. That seems really wild to me. That, they're burning I wish I could just suck on a bottle and burn a ton of calories.
I know.
It doesn't really, or does that, I don't know. It just seems like it doesn't make sense to me.
I know it. But everybody says, oh, they burn too many calories when they're breastfeeding. We'll give them a bottle because it's easier. But it really isn't easier for them.
No. Yeah.
So as far as I know, I just totally got off on a tangent. But so the nipple confusion thing, like that can happen if babies are struggling to take a bottle. Like that might happen. And you might notice that like if they're having a hard time taking a pacifier, they might struggle a little bit with a bottle. If they are like gagging a lot, if they are they're just not nursing well, then they might struggle a little bit with taking a bottle. And you can, if they're just breastfeeding fine and you're just waiting to give them a bottle, you can introduce a bottle anytime after, like I said, like 2 or 3 weeks or so. That is totally okay. Sometimes people will wait until the baby's like, they just wait till the very last minute before they have to go back to work. I would totally not do that because we want to make sure they can take that bottle okay. So don't wait until like the day before you go back to work and then have them like not taking it.
Right.
Wow. Because then you're going to be stressed out. So you want to be sure that they're doing okay with it, because it is stressful for them to kind of like try to figure out how to do something new. So I always suggest when you're trying a bottle for the first time, like another thing that people say too is don't let the mother feed the bottle, because then they're going to confuse that with breastfeeding and all this stuff. And I don't see where that is really a thing either, because babies feed with their mother. Like that's what they do. Yeah. So getting the bottle from their mother might actually be the better thing for them. They don't necessarily have to take a bottle from somebody else. I mean, if you want them to, if you want, your partner to be involved or something like that, then absolutely try that. But if the baby isn't taking the bottle from somebody else, then you try to give them the bottle as the parent, as the mother, try to give the bottle, because that might be, your baby might go, oh, okay, this is safe. I'm with my mom. Try it during a time where they're not going to be as fussy, like maybe right before sleeping, if they're like super groggy, maybe during a time when they're happy. I wouldn't give it during their miserable cluster feeding, screaming in the evening type of time, because they're not going to probably take it well for the first time if they're already like in a,
they're already upset. Yeah.
Yeah. They're already upset. Try some time at a time where they're more calm, where it's easier for them to take it. It is really like, people struggle even to figure out like, how much should I give my baby in a bottle? Because when you're, if you're just breastfeeding, obviously you don't know what your baby's taking, and that's fine. Like it's totally fine because your baby takes what they want to take. But then you go to give them a bottle and it's like, how much do I put in it? Yep. So if your baby depends on the age of your baby. If your baby is like, if they're only a couple weeks old, only do about 2 ounces. That's all you need, is like 2 ounces of milk. Breastfed babies, and I always say this like every other podcast, I feel like, but breastfed babies only take about 4 ounces regardless of their age. So you don't need to like do huge amounts of milk. Don't do 4 ounces if your baby's only like a month old. But when they get to be like 3, 4 months old, 5 months old, 6 months old, they still only need about 4 ounces, and that's it. They don't go up in volume because the milk changes to accommodate their needs. So they don't need more volume every single time they eat, because everything they need is already in the milk. So they don't need more volume. They get full from what they're getting.
And that's what you're going to hear so much from like daycares or care providers are like, we need more milk. We need more milk. And then people are like, oh, well, I can't keep up with my baby.
I had a message about that yesterday. Yeah. I just had a message about that yesterday with somebody who was trying to keep up. She had gotten her period, so her milk supply was lower, and she was trying to keep up. And I'm like, how much is the baby getting? And like 5 to 7 ounces per bottle. I'm like, per bottle? And she said, yes. And my mother keeps saying that I need more. They need more because the baby's starving. She goes, my mother and my mother-in-law keep saying that the baby is starving. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, no wonder you can't keep up.
Yeah.
Like, that's too much. Like, how are you supposed to keep up with that?
I know. We never think like, oh, maybe the baby needs less.
Right.
Because that sounds scary. Like, maybe I should just withhold food from my baby. And it's like, well, you don't want to, you're just trying to not overfeed your baby.
Right.
And
what I usually, I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. No, that's fine. What I always tell people is like, try to think of it as like about an ounce an hour when you're away. And I said, they can give the baby 7 ounces, but then they got to go a span of time without feeding them. Like that's, like you can give more volume per bottle if you want. If you're like, well, now my baby's used to taking 6 ounces per bottle. Am I supposed to just take that away? Well, then lengthen the time between bottles, because they only need about an ounce an hour while you're gone from them. So
but then also be careful too, because that's like kind of saying like, okay, well, we need a certain amount of calories per day, so I'll just have all those calories in the morning. And like, that's not going to be you're not going to feel good.
Right.
Like babies, it would be more convenient if they would just feed like twice a day and you could just give them like 12 ounces in a bottle and just be done with it.
I know.
But like they have tiny little stomachs. They have to you got to space that out.
That is better to do.
Yeah. And usually babies are usually feeding every 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the age, but.
And you also got to think too, like babies only take about 25 to 30 ounces a day. So if they're getting 28 ounces while you're at work, I mean, that's your whole day right there, you know? So you have to kind of give it some consideration. And this particular mother worked long stretches because she was a nurse. So she would work 12-hour shifts. So the baby was gone from her for long periods of time. But still, that's a lot of milk to try to keep up with. So babies really, like I said, babies are only need about 4 ounces per bottle. So you don't need to be like trying to keep up with huge amounts per bottle. That's really hard to do. So when you're first starting bottles, like you said, about 2 ounces is fine. Sometimes babies are a little bit fussy with taking a bottle the first time. So you might need to kind of do a little bit at a time. That's totally normal to do. If they take it really well, that's great. If you're really, really struggling, contact a lactation consultant because they can help you with that. You might think, well, how's a lactation consultant going to help me with my baby taking bottles? But they can help to determine what is going on, like why aren't they taking it well? And they can help you with that. So definitely contact somebody, especially if you're in a position where you really need your baby to take one because you're going back to work. Then you can, that's really stressful when you're trying to figure out like, don't go into it thinking like, well, they'll take it eventually because they're going to be hungry. Like they're not withholding from you on purpose, just so that they can breastfeed at a month old. Right. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it because I'm going to be breastfeeding.
That's what, it's like, you got to be careful to watch your thinking around like being manipulated, like, oh, well, they just think the bottle's easier or, they just want to be with you. It's like, they don't know all these things. They're not they're not lazy. They're not trying to take the easy way out. They're not just like, oh, this is too hard, I'm going to bottle feed. Like they're like totally wired to want to nurse, first of all. And like, they can't manipulate you.
Right.
Later on, they might, depending on like way later.
Way later.
If that's like something that, and also that's like learned, that's like a learned behavior that people learn when their needs aren't getting met.
Yeah.
But babies are not, like if they're struggling to take a bottle, they're not just trying to be difficult.
No, they're having a problem if they're not taking it well. They're definitely
Well, and
something's
it goes
going
the other
on.
way around too, because people say like, people are like, oh, they don't want to breastfeed. Your baby doesn't want to breastfeed, or some babies just don't breastfeed. They just take a bottle. That's what my mom said about my sister. She's like, well, she just didn't want to breastfeed. I'm like, okay.
So did they make that decision at 3 days of life?
Yeah, right. Yeah, she just decided when she was born that she didn't prefer that. She preferred the bottle.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
No. Yeah, there's a problem.
Yeah, something's going on to make them not do it.
It seems so difficult. Like if you have a baby that's struggling with a bottle, really struggling, and you feel like you need to see a lactation consultant, maybe your lactation consultant feels like you need to see a specialist about like, learning how to move their mouth in a certain way or whatever. Or like releasing tension, right? There's like a whole bunch of different things that could be going on with difficulty taking a bottle. And it seems like that seems so daunting to like have to deal with all of that. But it's not like you have to do it forever. Like they can work on that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's not like now we're going to go, it's not like you're going into like, psychoanalysis where it's like, okay, here, we're going to do this for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's not. It's like you deal with these problems and they can help. And then your baby will take a bottle.
Yeah. I mean, the earlier, the better. Babies at around 4 months can kind of control a little bit more of what goes in their mouth. So if you do decide to like wait, and then you get to be like, your baby gets to be like 4 or 5 months, and then you're like, oh, I want to go out for the night, let me leave a bottle, but they've never had one before, they might not take it. And that's where they might be like, I don't really want this, because they can control that a little bit better. But in those early days, in your first month or two, if they're not doing it, that is where we're like, oh, is something going on? Are they not, are they just really struggling to try to figure out how to take it? Sucking and swallowing is very different with a bottle than it is with breast. So just kind of keep that in mind, that they everybody figures, oh, they're just going to take this bottle so easily. But they might not if they're struggling to figure out how to switch it up and how to suck and swallow with a bottle as opposed to on the breast. So if you're struggling with that, you can try, like I said, you could try a bottle anytime after the first couple weeks. If you're having trouble with it, definitely contact a lactation consultant. If you're looking to give your baby a cup, or you're looking to do something other than bottle, anytime after 7 months is good for a cup. A little bit of water, let them play with it, let them figure it out. Might take them a little bit of time, but they'll figure it out. Straw cup. Best.
Yeah. And if you're struggling with this, you can have a consultation with Dianne.
Yeah.
And
you can
check and see if your insurance even covers it. And then it's just a free consultation with a lactation consultant.
Yeah. No copay, nothing.
Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.